Physical Science, Chapter 1, The Nature of Science. This is pages 4 through 27 in your textbook. Chapter 1, Section 1, The Methods of Science. So what is science? Basically, science is a method for understanding the world. It comes from the Latin scientia, which means knowledge. And then science is a process based on inquiry that helps develop explanations about events in nature. So, assumptions and expectations for science. First off, nature is understandable. We have to assume that we can understand what's going on. It does follow a set of rules, or nature follows a set of rules. We have to make that assumption that there are rules in nature. Um, Another assumption, similar forces in similar situations will cause similar results. This is an idea called uniformitarianism, which basically is the assumption that the same natural laws and processes that we see today existed in the past. So those two kind of go together. Um, Also, that nature is predictable. If you understand the rules and you understand how nature works, you can predict what's going to happen. That's how we get weather forecasts. That's how we are getting better about predicting earthquakes and volcanic eruptions and things like that. But future behavior of natural forces can be anticipated based on what we know about nature. Major categories of science. So, life science investigates living things. So, this is biology, ecology, medical science, things like that. Those are all life sciences. Earth science investigates Earth and space. So, looking at earthquakes and volcanoes and stars and planets and galaxies and things like that. Physical science, which is what this class is, studies matter and energy. So, basically, what that means is physics and chemistry. These categories may overlap in some fields of research. There's an example in the book about artificial limbs and prosthetics, for example. Is that biology? You're making artificial limbs for a person. But is it physics because you're designing the limbs? Is it earth science because you got to deal with different minerals and things like that? Is it chemistry because of that? Um, so there's some overlap there. Ecology and environmental science are actually what they call interdisciplinary sciences or multidisciplinary sciences because they incorporate um, aspects of all of the sciences. So if you're looking at environmental science, you may deal with life science. How does pollution affect animals? You're looking at the chemistry. How do different things interact in the environment, such as depleting the ozone layer and stuff like that. Or physical science. How do things move around? How do things move around the planet? So if you have pollution in one area, how does that move somewhere else? So these tend to overlap a lot. So science changes. That's another thing. Big thing that a lot of students and a lot of people in general have trouble with. Science changes. They assume that if a scientist says something, that's set in stone and that is the answer forever. That is not true. Science or scientific explanations of the natural world may change or be modified, or may be changed or modified. New information often requires scientists to revise explanations. So if we get new information, we have to incorporate that into our explanation. So if there's new information that doesn't go along with our current explanation, we have to figure out how to incorporate that. Earlier explanation may be incomplete for various reasons. Often new technology provides new or better information. So looking at the little picture there, we have sort of the history of atomic theory. And originally they thought it was a little mushy ball. Atoms were a little mushy ball with these little electrons stuck in them because we discovered electrons. Didn't know anything about the rest of it. Better equipment and better techniques allowed us to discover the nucleus of the atom. And then now we are actually able to tell where the nucleus is versus the electron cloud. And actually with atom smashers and things like that, we've actually busted up nuclei and seen what they are made of, what the protons and neutrons are actually made of. So atomic theory is a good example of how new technology provides new and better information. Science is what we call tentative. Tentative basically means it's temporary. It's basically the best explanation we have for the information that we have. So it's based on the best available information, and it's our best explanation that fits all the information. New information means it can change, so it's tentative. Tentative meaning temporary again. Again, development of atomic theory, we kind of talked about this. A second ago, so in the early 1900s, um, Thomson, a guy named Thomson, basically discovered electrons. We'll talk more about him later. But basically, the idea is he discovered electrons, which are they are on the outer shell of, or the outer layers of the atom. We know that now. But he discovered electrons. He didn't know what else was in the atom, but electrons he knew had a negative charge. So negative charge has to have a positive charge to balance that out, because he knew matter was neutral. So he kind of had to said, well, there are electrons, so we have to put those in there somewhere. And then basically said, well, maybe the rest of this is this mushy ball of stuff that has a positive charge, and the electrons are just kind of stuck to it, like raisin bread or something. Or you could actually call it plum pudding, which plum pudding is kind of like raisin bread with some other seeds and stuff in it. In 1909, a guy named Rutherford discovered the nucleus of the atom. And when he discovered the nucleus, he discovered it was positively charged. So he had to create a new model that said the nucleus was positively charged, very dense. Most of the mass of the atom is in the nucleus, and then it had a positive charge. And then the electrons are just kind of zipping around on the outside here. Present day understanding of the atom, it's actually more complicated than this, really, but we know that there's a nucleus and then there's this cloud of electrons out here. So as time goes by, you get better explanations based on better equipment, better research. So investigations. So investigations is kind of a general term that we use to talk about how scientists gain new information. We gain new information by performing investigations. We don't like to just use the word experiment, because they're not always experiments. So for example, some investigations may be as simple as observing something. These are called observational studies. So observing something that occurs and recording those observations. If you're counting birds, to count a bird population, you're just observing, you're counting birds. You're not really experimenting on those birds in any way. You're just counting the bird calls or counting the number of birds that are there. So that would be an observational study. Maybe more complex experiments with a control group to test the effects of one thing on another. We call these experimental studies. These are what we usually think of when we think about doing experiments. We kind of set up variables and we test one thing compared to another. These are usually conducted in a lab where you can control all the different variables and aspects of the experiment to get clean results. Again, these may require building or drawing models as well. So sometimes observational studies may lead to building models. So you may look at different things that we know about birds, like what they eat and what time of year they're around, different temperatures and their effects on them, etc. You may put all that into a computer model and then kind of use that computer model then to get a better idea of what would happen if temperatures changed, or what would happen if a food supply disappeared. Then it would be more of an experiment. Nature of scientific investigations. Work may be conducted in the field or in the lab. Scientists use similar methods to gather data and communicate information. And scientific methods, notice it's plural, are a series of problem-solving procedures that help scientists conduct investigations. There are 6 basic parts, but the big thing is these don't necessarily occur in one straight order. But typically they start with stating a problem, gathering some background information, forming a hypothesis of some sort, testing that hypothesis, analyzing that data, drawing conclusions. And once you draw conclusions, some simpler versions of the scientific method, singular, says you draw conclusions and you're done. Well, that's not the way it usually works. You draw conclusions. If the hypothesis is supported, you tend to repeat that to see if it holds up, or if it was just a fluke that you supported it, if it was just an accident. Or if the hypothesis is not supported, you modify that hypothesis and test it again. So these are not rigid steps, like I just said. It's the scientific methods. It's got an S on the end of it. It's not just one method. These are not rigid step-by-step. This is not a rigid step-by-step outline to solve problems. It's a list of procedures that can be used. There are many different approaches. The approach typically is dictated by what you're studying. New hypotheses may come from unexpected results. So you may have an unexpected result, and that creates a new hypothesis, which creates a whole new line of research. Procedures may be modified. Control methods or mechanisms can be changed. Some natural phenomena might change the investigation. So, especially if you're dealing with environmental studies, natural phenomenon can affect those investigations. So, another version of the scientific method, so basically observe an unexplained phenomenon, collect information, make observations, ask questions, use prior knowledge, review related research. This use prior knowledge, that's basically why you take science classes in schools, to get some of that prior knowledge, to get some of that information that we already know. Then you form a hypothesis, design an experiment to test the chosen hypothesis, conduct an experiment and record the data. You have your actual results, you compare those with the expected results, draw some conclusions. And basically here, it's if you have the hypothesis is supported, you basically repeat the experiment many more times to see if the results are consistent. If it's not supported, you refine the test, or refine and test an alternate hypothesis. So you come up with a new hypothesis and test that. If the reported result, basically after you do that, then you report the results of the experiment, compare results from similar experiments. Accepted hypothesis basically leads to additional experimentation based on the accepted hypothesis. So it's a list of steps, and it can cycle back on itself. Some steps may be left out, but not usually. So, but they don't always just go in a straight order. They do kind of go in loops. So creating a hypothesis. So scientists must gather information, background information on the topic being investigated. So you must first define the problem. So what is the problem? Background information is found in papers and books published by other scientists. So library or internet research, science classes, scientific conferences. This is where we get background information from, what other people have already done and reported. Hypothesis based on problem and background information. So once you get your problem stated, you get some background information, you have a better idea of maybe why the problem, or maybe get a better idea to an answer to the problem. And then from there, you create your hypothesis. And a hypothesis is a testable explanation of observations. A lot of people say that a hypothesis is an educated guess. That's an okay definition if you add that it is testable in some way. So a hypothesis must be testable. If it's not testable, it's not a hypothesis. So it can be supported or disproved by careful procedures. Again, making it testable. So experimentation. So if you're experimenting, an experiment is an organized procedure that involves making observations and measurements to test a hypothesis. So you have your hypothesis, you define some variables, and you conduct an experiment. So you have two different types of data you can collect during an experiment. You have qualitative data, which includes descriptive observations without numbers. So you could say it bubbled, or it smelled bad, or it was gray, or whatever. So color changes, things like that. Those are qualitative data. Quantitative data, just like a quantity is a number, so quantitative data includes measurements with numbers and units, really. I should say units out here too. So quantitative data has measurements with numbers and units for those numbers. So an example here, we have acid on rocks. So you may have different types of rocks. Actually, these are all the same type of rock. Should all be like limestone, looks like. You can observe changes. So your observed changes would be your qualitative data. So did it bubble? Did it have a smell to it? Anything like that. And you also measure changes. So you can actually measure maybe how long it bubbles for, or how many bubbles are produced. It might be hard to count. Or does the mass of the sample change? Again, you have to have something fairly sensitive to measure that.